I've always heard if you stay ready, you won't have to get ready. Well, my intention today is to ensure that we remain ready, particularly my board leaders, board chairmen, those especially that are working with nonprofit succession planning. I want to speak directly to you today. My hope is to further inspire board leadership to consider well in advance your succession and leadership needs before you need them. We all know that leadership matters, and it matters critically in times of importance. Yet we find ourselves often somewhat surprised at times by leadership transition, but we don't have to be. In a moment, I'll share my screen. I'm Dr. Monica Moody Moore. If this is our first time being introduced, I'm happy to meet you. If you've been with me before, welcome back. Please share this information as broadly as possible. And more importantly, partner with those that are well suited to help you with your succession planning and your executive search so that you can get best in class talent to achieve your mission to the highest degree possible. Let me share my screen and get into work with you today. Hopefully, we can do this rather quickly. I'll try to go through some information that I think you can use no matter what sector you're in. But in particular, I think sometimes my nonprofit leaders can really benefit from this understanding well in advance. If you contemplate proactively your leadership needs, that's both from an assessment and diagnostic perspective, as well as your in house pipeline. Who do you already have that's either ready, prepared, eager, and able to take on the charge in the event of leadership transition? Or who do you have in your sphere of influence that you can bring to the table? What we know to be true is that leadership transitions can be costly. They can cost us time, they can cost us funding opportunities, they can lead to dampening morale or staff engagement. All of these factors are possible consequences in the times of leadership transition. So, a couple of things to consider before you need to consider it. As you're thinking about your programmatic needs, when leadership changes, some of those decisions that are critically important can be compromised. Deciding which strategy to take or what road to go down, sometimes remaining staff may be hesitant to make big choices, and the board may even hesitate, waiting for the next either executive director or CEO to come on. So, again, these leadership changes can impact programmatic initiatives, let alone the funding gaps that can emerge. I'm a philanthropist also. I know many people give. They often give to what they see and believe in and have some degree of certainty around. Leadership transitions don't often conjure up a lot of confidence in what the future may hold. But once leadership is identified, you can actually garner a lot more of support. So sometimes funding is compromised during times of leadership transition. And of course, we know staff turnover and morale. How many times have we heard, oh, I love that last leader? It does happen, even though it sounds funny to even say. Yes, leaders are sometimes beloved. We often hear tales of stories in the contrary, but many leaders are well beloved. And when they transition out, sometimes that can lead to others that want to leave as well, or people wondering, should they jump ship? Or uncertainty about the future of the organization. So, what we know to be true, let me give you a case study example. This is ripped from the headlines using a nonprofit as a real life example of what can happen when you're not prepared, either in working with a reputable search agency or preparing for your succession plan. These are some of the consequences. And again, not to frighten you, but to make more tangible what comes about. It's a youth development nonprofit. They had a wonderful leader that was beloved for many, many years, but unexpectedly, there was a leadership transition. That leader was no longer in that role. They did not have a pipeline already internally prepared, nor had there been much contemplation on what comes next. Who would they search for? What was the profile of the organization that could be well articulated to a potential leader coming in? So what happened? Program considerations, they had ideas for expansion and broadening out into other territories. That stalled completely. They chose to hold the line. A major grant that they were pursuing, of course, grants like to know who's your hierarchy, who's in charge, particularly when there's money going to be exchanged. That compromised their grant pursuits at the time. They chose to stand down and hold off on pursuing a significant grant. And at the end of the day, it took 22 months because they had not done initial legwork to be up on their stilts in order to pursue their next leader. And it was almost 2 years of a leadership transition, which probably could have just been at the most 6 months, even in doing a national search, had they been a little better prepared internally. So here's our belief that succession is not a singular event, it's not single in motion. That means there is a mindset that you can deploy to help you well in advance of needing it, to be proactive instead of reactive, that you prepare for vacancies in advance. For example, having articulated job descriptions for everyone. That includes your more senior people to understand the skill sets that are needed and to also understand the skill sets of those existing so that you can mine the gaps and be certain that you're filling properly with the full set of needs that you may have. That you're considering in your pipeline, who's within your circle of influence, your advisory groups, your volunteers, your donors, those that are already well known to you and know about you. They may also have senior leaders that are viable candidates either for interim or fractional roles, or they may be helpful in leading you to your next hire. But more importantly, I think this is where partnering with an executive search provider, and I can give a suggestion of Encore Leadership Advisors, would be a great complement and partner for you to contemplate not only at the time of your need, but in preparing for your leadership transition. I know it may sound like an oxymoron to prepare for the transition that is unexpected. But again, I believe that it is possible to do that type of legwork in advance. And lastly, if I can encourage you, and I'm sure you do, but to always be mindful of your mission alignment and not just the credentials. Certainly, it matters where your leaders hail most recently and in their careers, or what attributes they hold or in terms of credentials, but also consider seriously your mission and how that leader aligns with that mission. Working with the search firm can help you identify leaders that may not currently be on the quest. Here's an example. Your top performing person sometimes is hitting it out of the park and not contemplating their next job. Their heads are down, their might is heavily involved in their current work situation. So they're not looking for their next opportunity until a search consultant is able to help mine them and help explore their potential interest in a new opportunity. So it is the responsibility of the governance of the board and the oversight group to ensure proper succession planning. I do encourage regular reviews, quarterly even, in terms of your talent, who's on first, who's on second, their skill set. You're updating your profile to make relevant any of your superlatives so that if you do have a leadership change, you could quickly create your portfolio and profile form and get it out to the marketplace. That you have measurable objectives, that your impact is documented and easy for any leader coming in to see. Sometimes having annual impact studies or your annual review or annual report is very helpful because we'll use that in the search process so that we can help identify talent that aligns with where you're going and where you have been. Lastly, I've said it a couple of times, and just to reinforce, the value add of working with a search partner, I think, cannot be understated, particularly the role of the governance committee and the board to identify a search firm to partner with that understands you and understands the market. An example is the Encore Leadership Advisors. I do encourage you as a second step to build your pipeline internally. Yes, we're always thinking about external searches and going out nationally or sometimes internationally to find talent. You can also develop your talent pipeline more seamlessly internally with professional development, with coaching, with exposure opportunities. I speak often about Harvey Coleman's work. He speaks about performance, image, and exposure, and how of those three areas, exposure is something that oftentimes employees and those that are emerging leaders can benefit from, yet they lack tremendously in their organizations. So I do encourage internal or boards to think about your internal pipeline, and exposure is very important. Your brand represents who you are long before you communicate directly with any potential incoming leader. Your web presence, where you're positioned in the marketplace in terms of where you show up at conferences or in other coalitions, the business that you do quite naturally, it speaks volumes. So articulate your mission value proposition very clearly. That will help as you're searching for a new leader, as well as you're articulating to your internal team what you stand for and why it has meaning in the marketplace. It may also have that same meaning to your employees, but think strategically about that, what it is and how best to articulate it. Your brand does matter. Anyone who then looks at you coming from the outside looking in doesn't know you as well as you do. So the more you can articulate your strengths to them, the better you can find talent that naturally aligns. Here's your strategic approach in ongoing onboarding. Partner strategically with firms that represent your mission alignment, those that already know your space and already know the landscape, but have a real deep-seated commitment to the work that you're doing. That does matter enormously. Warm leads can come from anywhere, from your advisors, from your volunteers, from those who participate in your events. Think strategically about how to position your outreach so that you can find best in class talent. And that's exactly what executive search firms can help you do. We can help you with fractional hires, those that are just going to fill temporarily, as well as your full-time, all the time permanent hire with onboarding support. I also encourage you to think as a phased transition, that we're thinking well in advance of the need, several months prior to the hiring process, and then several months thereafter the hiring process, so that you can thread the needle all the way through. Your succession readiness toolkit begins with one, your intention to think thoughtfully about what you need, how you need it, and when best to deploy it. To partner with others that are doing this work in a meaningful way, to have a 30, 60, 90-day onboarding blueprint. I can't tell you how often leaders may not be contemplating what happens next after the hire is secured. So I encourage you to think holistically about that well in advance. I do represent Encore Leadership Advisors. It may not surprise you hearing how frequently I've referenced it in the course of this conversation. I have a broad portfolio. I encourage you to partner with me. Contact me directly, Monica at EncoreLeadershipAdvisors.com, to help you find your best in class talent so that we can do this work in a meaningful way